Hi, everybody. Today, I wanted to go ahead and cover a certain subject, a certain topic that it's always of a lot of interest around here in the shop, and that is Cuban cigars. What are Cuban cigars? Well, I'm going to ask you guys a question. The cigars that I make here, are they Cuban cigars? That's a tough one, right? Got you thinking. Well, for fans of Cohiba and, of course, the brands, Partagas and Romeo and Juliet and all the Cuban brands per se, even though that there's Dominican versions and Nicaraguan versions and stuff, I know that for those, I guess, true Puritans, I guess we'll call them, my cigars are not Cuban cigars. But let's think about this in retrospect here. The cigars that were made back in Florida in the 1800s, in Tampa specifically, here in the area that I'm in, Key West, some up in Jacksonville, at the time, right? Those cigars were called clear Havanas. And the reason they were called clear Havana cigars, here's one of them right here that I make, La Floridana. This is an old Tampa brand from back in late 1800s, early 1900s. So, this is a Cuban cigar in my opinion, and I'm going to tell you guys why. The founder of the brand, two of them, was Mr. Emilio Pons. And Candido Ybor, Mr. Ybor from Ybor City, his son. Both Cubans, by the way. So at the time, you had Cuban expatriates living in Florida, bringing in tobacco from Cuba, making Cuban cigars, or Cuban seed, or clear Havana. It's an old term. I bet if you walked into their shop back then and you tried telling them that their cigars were not Cuban, they'd probably be offended, because they probably would have been like, what do you mean my cigars are not Cuban? I'm Cuban. And when people ask me, I say, well, we've got a sign outside and it says Cuban cigars. So folks walk in here all the time, and they, the only reason I got the sign, let me just say this first. The only reason I have the sign out there to begin with is to stir up a conversation. Because if somebody's walking by, the sidewalk, and they see our cigar shop, they're probably going to be poised to come in here and say, well, which they do. Well, Cuban cigar, I thought Cuban cigars were illegal, And, that's when I like to say, well, not really. And then they say, well, what do you mean? And I like to give them some clarification. And the clarification I give them is, well, if you go to Havana and you bring the cigars back, those are Cuban cigars made in Cuba. But it just turns out that you're walking into a Cuban cigar shop owned by real Cubans, because, we're real Cubans here last time I checked. And we're making cigars in Florida, and we've been doing that for years. And it's not a concept that I created. Like I said, Mr. Ybor and Emilio Pons and Ignacio Aya and, all these guys back in the day, they all made Cuban cigars, or clear Havanas. And, it's just an interesting topic. The other thing to ponder, too, to consider, and I don't want to get political, but unfortunately, I guess I'm going to have to, is, the cigars we make here in the States, and the cigars that a lot of the manufacturers make in Nicaragua, Dominican Republic, a lot of these people are Cuban families as well that, they fled during the revolution, after the revolution. They went to all these different countries and they started making cigars there because the Cuban government basically nationalized their businesses. They confiscated, their livelihood. My grandfather had a small factory. Wasn't anything big. See, Tobacco Serafin, there's the sign. And even he was a victim of, the whole thing with Cuba and the revolution and Fidel Castro and everything. And I remember, my father telling me, this is a damn good cigar, by the way, La Floridana. We make this in a few different sizes. Robusto, Lancero, Little Piggy. We also make a 6x60 as well. And this is a Habano wrapper, but it's a Nicaraguan Habano. So it's a little bit milder than our typical Flor de Tampa, which I love, by the way. But anyway, so when the whole thing happened in Cuba, my grandfather was already, let's see, was he in the 60s? Yeah, just about. He was kind of ready to retire. So, Cuba Tobacco came knocking on. This is how the communists are, right? They're so great. They take away your business that you've worked all your life for, and then after they take it away, they invite you to come back and be basically an employee. So they said to my grandfather, "Hey, listen, Ramon, why don't you come back and work for us?" Because he had a little factory with mostly his family, his brother, brothers and sisters and family members. My dad, of course, worked with him. And after they took it away, they said, well, why don't you come back and work for us? And he said, no, you know what? I'm going to politely decline. That's not really what he said, but we'll leave it at that. My uncle, who I have a picture on the wall, I'll show you guys a picture, Antonio Serafin, he decided to go work for Cuba Tobacco for about a year. In 1960, and he was always kind of like the real easygoing one in the family. He wasn't a hothead like my grandfather. And my dad says that after a little while, I don't even think it lasted a year, he said, you know what, I don't want to work for these people. They're a bunch of criminals. So he decided to retire too, and that was the end of that endeavor with the state-run tobacco company. But anyway, going back to the issue at hand, I always like to say that, the issue at hand. Not that there's anything, if you don't feel that there's anything wrong with it, but I just don't want to buy Cuban cigars and support a regime that has been, abusing their people for 60 years. I'm sorry. And, guys, not to mention, not because I'm in the business and I think we make pretty decent cigars, but there's a lot of great cigars out there that are not Cuban cigars made in Cuba. But, by the way, they're made by Cubans. So, if you want to call them Cuban cigars or not, up to you. By the way, they use Cuban seed tobacco, most of them, grown in Central America, other countries like we do. But they're every bit as Cuban as the ones made in Cuba. As a matter of fact, they're more Cuban because these belong to free Cubans who, pay taxes here in the United States, most of them. And you know what? They're family businesses. They're run by families today. The Fuentes, the Padrones, Perdomo. It puts money in their jar, I guess. It feeds their family. You know what I'm saying? And to me, that has a lot of merit, I just don't want to support the cigars coming out of Cuba with the regime and everything. And listen, I love Cuban cigars. I think they're great. When you get a good Cuban cigar, it is fantastic. But I have hard feelings, to support the regime. And then the other thing, the flip side of this is, I just got back from the Bahamas a couple days ago, and you got to see how many fake Cuban cigars are out there. All these different independent places calling themselves, not Casa de Habano, but Cuban Cigar House or whatever. All they're doing is selling fake Cuban cigars, guys, and they're pondering them off to people, and people that don't know any better, tourists and stuff. They think they're getting the genuine article. I sat down at a bar in the casino one night, and this fellow was, he had a Cohiba sitting on the counter, and I just glanced at it and I said, just making conversation. I said, oh, did you buy that here? Oh yeah. I go, do you mind if I take a look at it? He says, no, go right ahead. And I inspected it, and, you know, I've been doing this long enough that I kind of know what I'm looking for. And I saw it, and I said, next question, right? So what did you pay for it? He said, oh, this guy gave me a great deal, because people always give him great deals. I said, yeah? What kind of a great deal did you get? He goes, I bought 3 of them for $15. Cohiba Sublime, by the way. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Behike. I said, you know, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but you want me to tell you the truth? He says, sure. I said, it's not the genuine article, man. Especially, number one, the price should be a red flag already. But if it's not, you're not getting the genuine article, you know? And he was a little bit disappointed when I told him. And that's understandable, too. But, you know, real Behikes in Cuba are a lot more than that. In Germany, in Europe, I mean, I think they go like north of $50 or something. So, you know, always be leery of that great deal, the price that you're getting. But anyway, are my cigars Cuban or not? I'll let you guys decide that. I'll let you guys figure that one out. Cuban or not? Am I Cuban or not? When you go to a pizzeria in Brooklyn and you got a bunch of Italians making pizza, is it Italian pizza? Better yet, when you go to a Mexican restaurant and you got a bunch of Mexicans cooking in the kitchen, authentic Mexican, right? Is it an authentic Mexican restaurant? I don't know. Got to think about that one, guys. Anyway, thanks for watching, and hope you guys are having a great summer. Thanks. Remember to order your Floridanas, or Flor de Tampa, or Prince of Wales, or Don Ramon, or any of our brands, which I'm really, really proud of and excited. And I guess if you don't want to call them Cuban, you can call them Cuban American brands. Anyway, thanks again, guys. Take care.